Hello, my name is David Kalinoski with AARP Pennsylvania, and I'm honored to be here with County Commissioner Julie Wheeler, President of the York County Bureau of Elections. We're here to talk about how, when, and where to vote in York County. So, Commissioner Wheeler, thank you for being with us today.
You're welcome. Delighted to be here.
And let's get started with a few questions about voter registration and eligibility. So, for folks who want to make sure in York County that they're registered and ready to vote, what's the best way for them to check their registration status?
Sure, there's a couple options. If they have readily access to the internet, the easiest thing that they could do is go to the state website at vote.pa.gov and put in their information, and that will tell them online their registration status. If they don't have reliable internet access, they can call our elections office at 717-771-9604, and anyone that answers the phone there will be able to assist them.
Great. And is there anything specific to the residents there? If they don't know whether or not they're eligible to vote, what would be the best way for them to determine that?
Two ways. One, they could call the office, or two, they could come to one of our two locations. We have a location in downtown York at 28 East Market Street, and we also have a location in East York at 2401 Pleasant Valley Road.
Great. So let's talk about the process of voting because some people may not really be familiar with all of the options that they have because this year they have multiple options. So can you walk us through maybe the different ways that York County residents can vote, either by mail or in person? And, what are their options?
So voters have a couple options. As I said, they can either vote by mail to request a mail-in or absentee ballot, or they can vote in person. One important deadline for voters to remember: if you want to request a mail-in or absentee ballot, the deadline to do that is October 29th. That's a week before the election day. We would encourage all voters who want to vote in that manner to get the request in early. Applying 1 week ahead of the election doesn't give the staff a lot of time, or the Postal Service, to do all the processing that needs to be done. Given the amount of mail-in ballots we saw in the 2020 general election, that was roughly 96,000, we do anticipate a high demand because it's a presidential election cycle. We just encourage folks to get that request in early.
Great. And are there any other deadlines that people need to adhere to or be attentive to?
The other deadline to be attentive to is October 21st. That is the last day a person can register to vote. That's also the last day to change your registration. So if you've moved and you want to vote in your new polling location, you need to put a change of address request in. Or if you got married, you changed your name for whatever reason, the deadline to make all of those changes is October 21st.
Speaking about polling places, has anything changed by way of polling places in York County? And for those people looking to vote, where should they find information on whether there's any changes in their polling location?
So there's two places voters can go to. They can go to the York County website at yorkcountypa.gov and go to the elections tab, and there's information there on all our polling locations. They can also go to the state website that we talked about earlier, vote.pa.gov, and navigate that. That has a list of all the polling locations across the Commonwealth. In York County, we have 161 polling locations, and we do expect those to all be open this election cycle. The most current place for them to find information, though, is the website. If they've got any concerns where they vote, they can call our office and ask one of the staff. We may, as with many elections, some things happen at last minute with facilities being available to use for polling locations. So we encourage folks to just double check before they go out to vote on election day that they're going to the right place. We really don't anticipate any changes at this juncture, but things do come up.
For folks who might have a disability, what is the process that they might look to in terms of getting their vote cast?
So for individuals who have a disability and are voting in person, there's a couple things. They can go to the polling location and they can take someone with them that can assist them. They will need to fill out a form if it's the first time they've brought someone with them to assist them in voting. If they've already voted with assistance at the polling location, the staff that work on election day, the poll workers, will have record of that in the book and they should be able to vote. If they don't have anybody that can go with them and need assistance, they are permitted to have one of the poll workers assist them in casting their ballot. What they're not permitted to do is they're not permitted to have the judge of elections assist them. They're not permitted to have their employer assist them or a union steward. And those are guidelines that are set forth in the statute. So that's the process for someone who desires to cast their vote in person. For those folks who want to cast their vote by mail, there's a couple options. So there are forms that can be found both on the county's website and the state website that can be filled out by a voter authorizing someone to come and pick their ballot up at the elections office. There is paperwork that needs to be done for that. In addition, we always like to remind folks, especially those folks who might find themselves in a situation where they wanted to vote in person and their schedule at the last minute doesn't permit that. They get sick, for example. We do have a process by which someone can request an emergency ballot. So there are provisions. Even if you miss that deadline of October 29th and you find yourself not able to go in person, please just call the county elections office and they can walk you through the emergency ballot process.
If I were to drop off a ballot for my spouse, am I allowed to do so, or for a family member?
You are not allowed to do so unless you have the authorized form filled out. So anyone that wants to drop their ballot off in person, which they're more than welcome to do, as long as they do that between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. at one of those two locations I mentioned earlier, either in our downtown office at 28 East Market Street or East York office at 2401 Pleasant Valley Road. You can only bring your own ballot in to drop off in person unless you have an authorized representative form.
So for those individuals who may have difficulty getting to a polling place, is there transportation in the county that might get somebody there if they prearrange it?
We have a wonderful relationship with Rapid Transit. So they can call Rapid Transit, and if they're not in a location that is on an existing bus route, Rapid Transit will do their best to work with them to get them to a polling location. The county has been very blessed in the relationship that we have with Rapid Transit, and especially on election day.
Let's go back to talk about voting by mail. What's the process like, and how can people make sure their ballot is counted?
Great question. So let's talk a little bit about the process. So after a voter requests a mail-in ballot, our election staff will process that request. Then that request will go to our mail house, who sends out the ballots to the voters. Voter receives it, they fill it out, and I'll talk a little bit in a minute about what they need to do to ensure it gets filled out accurately and appropriately. So they fill it out, and either they send it back in the mail, they bring it in person, or the county does provide some drive-up service a couple days before the election that people can actually drive up and drop their ballot off at either a downtown or East Turf location. Now, what happens to that ballot once we receive it? The election staff date stamps it, and then there's a barcode on the envelope that's mailed back that gets scanned in to our voter database system, which is called SURE. That's the system that all county elections offices use across the Commonwealth. So a voter can go back to that vote.pa.gov and put in their information, and they should be able to see when their ballot has been received by our office. What happens on election day at 7 a.m., the statute permits us to start an exercise that's called pre-canvassing. So on 7 a.m. on election day, the election staff, accompanied by our sheriff's deputy, will go get and retrieve the mail-in and absentee ballots that are in a secure location and bring them down for the county staff to start processing. So then at that point, they will do their processing. Once the polls close at 8 p.m., we will start tabulating and computating those votes. And then at that point, there'll be another flag that goes in the system that their vote has been counted. So that's kind of high level how the process works. Now, as a voter, when you receive your ballot in the mail, it is really important that you do a couple things. One, after you fill your ballot out, please fold that and put that in the secrecy envelope. If you do not put your ballot in the secrecy envelope, we are not permitted to count that ballot. So that's number one. Make sure you put it in the secrecy envelope. And then after that, you put the secrecy envelope in the outer envelope, what we call the declaration envelope, and you seal that. And there's two important things that you need to do after you seal that envelope. You need to make sure you date it, and you need to date it on the date that you filled out the ballot. Not your birth date, not the date you got married. Please put the date you filled the ballot out. And then the other thing you do is please sign it. You need to do both of those things. So put it in the secrecy envelope, then sign and date it, put a stamp on it, or drop it off to our office, and you will be good to go.
I know there's some common mistakes that people make, and I imagine that they're similar to what you just described in terms of people putting the wrong date down or people not signing the envelope, the outer envelope as well.
Yeah, so if someone would run into a problem when they're filling their ballot out, let's say they fill it out and they're all excited and they forget to put it in the secrecy envelope, but they remember that they forgot to put it in there and they're at home and they're filling out their paperwork, just call the elections office, and they'll kind of walk you through what you can do. So when in doubt, call the elections office.
So we've been hearing a lot about election security lately, and what steps are in place to make sure the election runs smoothly and securely in your county?
That is something 24/7 that we think about and work on. So when it comes to the ballots, let's take that part first. So once we receive ballots in from the mail, as I mentioned earlier, we date stamp them and we scan them in, and then they are taken immediately to a secure location. That location, the room that they're stored in, has fire suppression. Certainly paper, we don't want paper to burn. So we have a fire suppression system. We also have a 24-hour video camera. So as soon as that door opens, everyone and every motion is being recorded in there. There, those ballots stay until election day. So the ballots are safe and secure. For folks that are voting in person, when 8 p.m. comes, the judge of elections and their staff, close out the election, and then the contents of the machine are put into a secure bag that is sealed and then transported by the judge of elections to our office. And then at that point, the election staff will take the materials out and review the election day ballots. So that's kind of how we secure the ballots. But when you talk about security for our election staff, also for our poll workers and voters, we take that very seriously. One thing that we've done here in York County, which I believe is a best practice, is we have an emergency preparedness team. And that team is comprised of our election staff, members of the district attorney's office, our sheriff's office, our constables, emergency management, 911, our facilities team. They've been meeting on a regular basis, and we have an emergency preparedness plan in place. For example, if there was a power outage, right, we have a way to address that. So we have all of those things in place, trying to plan for everything that might happen. Certainly, we can't plan for it all, but really looking at those things that could happen from a security standpoint, safety standpoint, and even just natural occurrences as the weather or power outage. So we have a plan in place. And then on election day, that cross-functional group gets together 5 or 6 times throughout the day on a conference call just to talk about, hey, how's it going? What are we hearing? Do we need to pivot? One thing that we do get surprised a bit about is road closures. Unfortunately, we're not notified when PennDOT chooses to close a road, and closing a road near a polling location does wreak havoc on voters being able to get there. So we do our best to stay on top of that. If we hear about a road closure on election day, we do work with PennDOT and the local municipalities to address that.
Boy, a lot to be concerned about, but love the response that you provided in terms of security, that it's not just done that day on election day, but it's been going on throughout the year and leading up to the election. So a lot of the behind the scenes things that occur, most people don't even know about. So when things like voter fraud come up and everything else like that, I think people need to be a little bit more tuned in to some of the procedures and processes, especially those best practices that you just mentioned here in your county.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things that we do after each election is we have a debrief and we looked at what went well and what didn't go well. It's a continuous process improvement. We're always looking for ways to improve the voter experience. We're all human. This process is very human intensive, and we do make mistakes, but we do our best to fix those and then ensure we have appropriate checks and balances in place so that they don't happen again.
Does somebody need to show ID when they go to vote at their polling place?
If a voter is voting for the first time in person, the law requires that they bring an ID with them.
Once all the votes are in, you spoke a little bit before about canvassing starting as early as 7 a.m. How long should people expect to wait before official results are rendered?
We won't render official results until we have what's called the final certification, which will happen a couple weeks after the election. However, our staff, they are very diligent. So are our judge of elections. We stay till the work is done. So we anticipate that we will post unofficial results on our election website sometime very late in the evening on November 5th or very early the following day.
Is there anything else that we may not have touched upon that you'd like to at least mention here?
I think there's two things. One, if you vote in person, please take the time to thank those folks who are working on election day. It's a very long day for them, and they do their very best, and they are very committed to running efficient elections. So please say thank you to them. We could not be successful in running elections in York County without those folks. And then if you do happen to go by the elections office, please just thank those folks that work behind the counter there. They are really doing their very best for you. So please thank those folks. I think that there's a lot of noise that goes on out there, but I can guarantee you that our election staff and our poll workers are very much committed to running efficient and safe elections. So we mentioned earlier about folks who are voting by mail, that they can mail their ballot in or they can drop it off in person. The other thing that we do in York County is we provide what we like to call concierge drive-up service. So on October 26th, November 2nd, and November 3rd, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at both our downtown location and our East York location, we will be providing drive-up service. So a voter can drive up in their car. There will be a secure box there that will be staffed by a county employee and a sheriff's deputy, and they can just stick their ballot in the box, or they can give it to the sheriff's deputy or county staff to put in there for them. So we do provide that service. So if someone finds that they forgot to put it in the mail, don't worry. We got lots of options to ensure that you get your ballot in. And we staff it with a county employee and sheriff's deputy to secure the safety of the voter and also that ballot.
Commissioner Wheeler, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you today and giving more information, imparting more information to your county residents on how to vote, where to vote, and when to vote. So again, thank you for your time and all your insight.
Thank you for having me. One of the exciting things that will happen in the 2020 general election and also in the primary of 2025, earlier this year, the county, in collaboration with the Cultural Alliance of York, launched and designed the Next I Voted sticker. We had done some benchmarking at other communities across the nation and found a community that allowed students to design the I Voted sticker. So we gave it a try here. Huge success. So this year, when you vote in person, you will have an option to get one of three newly designed I Voted stickers by the students in our community. There was a winner from K through 5, a winner for 6 through 8, and then a winner from grades 9 through 12. So we are super excited that we will be rolling out those new stickers this general election. And they were by the creativity of right here, what will be future voters in York County.